Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you very much for joining me on this particular workshop. The title of the workshop is How CSOs Can Provide Access to Finance Services to SMEs. And I wish you all to enjoy the workshop, and I hope it will be an interactive one. Our agenda for today, we're going to have a kind of comprehensive introduction about SME life cycle and its financial needs. Then we'll move on to the providers of financial services to SMEs in Turkey. We're going to have a break around 14:40 for 10 minutes. Then we'll go for the second session and talk about building markets access to finance strategy in Turkey. Then we'll go to this big question: what can CSOs do to increase SMEs access to finance? And I hope this session will be interactive, and I put some time for open discussion. Finally, please remember to fill the evaluation form at the end of the workshop. I just set it at 15:20. Thank you very much for joining me, and let's go to the introduction. Let me introduce myself. My name is Basil Hariri. I'm the Advisory Services and Access to Finance Manager. Intentionally, I put this nice photo with a happy client. It's back for a few years ago. And the advisory services is really an exciting, career. Usually we meet a lot of interesting people. We work with a lot of interesting companies as well. My education background, I hold the MBA from the University of Exeter. I also have several certifications as enterprise credit evaluation, investment promotion, management trainer as well, and certified productivity management facilitator. At the beginning, I would like a few people from the audiences, thankfully, to introduce themselves if they wish to do it. Please, anybody can make the intervention and introduce him or herself.
Hi, Basai.
Hi. Hi, Oscar. Nice to hear you.
Yeah, you too. This is a very interesting subject for us. I'm the director of a small NGO. Köprü. A couple of years ago, we conducted a research about the difficulties of Syrian SMEs in Turkey in accessing finance. And we left our work there, basically, but we identified several problems. I'm very interested today to hear if there's been any improvement in terms of policies or their abilities. And also, since then, we've been in touch with some of the SMEs, and it will be very valuable for us to figure out some techniques, maybe some strategies to be able to help them, even if it's in a small scale. So very much looking forward to this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, really. Thank you. My pleasure, to host you here. Also, we have Mr. Amr Mahmoud from IFRC. If he would like to introduce himself.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, absolutely. Very clearly, sir. Please proceed.
First of all, thanks for the invitation and thanks for hosting us. And my name is Amr Mahmoud. I work for IFRC as a Socio-Economic Empowerment Officer. And I'm really looking forward to listen what you're going to say to us. And thanks again for hosting us.
Thank you very much, really. Okay, so we'll start, by having a kind of introduction to the SME life cycle and financial needs. Of course, SMEs in general terms, they are the main blocks of any economy. And from my personal experiences, and I had the opportunity to study in Japan. It was in 1996 exactly. At the time when I was flying over there, I thought that the Japanese economy is mostly consists of those big corporations that we hear about, like Sony, Toyota, and all these big names. But over there, I discovered that the Japanese economy, around 90% of it is actually small and micro businesses, which means that businesses that are less than 10 employees. And those small and medium-sized enterprises in Japan, they usually provide a lot of services to the corporations. For example, a Toyota business model is just a kind of pyramid. On the top of it is the brand. On the base of the pyramid, there will be tens of thousands of SMEs providing, products and services to Toyota. And it was that particular issue fascinated me at the time. And then, through my career from the mid-90s till now, I started to understand that SMEs are really a very important issue, especially when it comes to job creation, make a local economic developments, and so on. So it worth, doing this kind of studying of the SME life cycle and its financial needs. Usually, most of the models available at the time, they focus on this particular cycle, which is constituted of 5 stages or phases. In this particular diagram, we are handling it with the 3 variables, which is revenues, profit, and cash flows. As we all know that during the launch phase, which is the inception phase of any business, well, apart from its size, whether it's micro, small, or medium, usually revenues start to kick off. They start to increase steadily over time, while profit will lag a bit behind because of high operating costs and other issues related to the volume of the sales that they are achieving through the inception. While cash flows, actually, they are just behind the two because most of the capitalization and the startup costs appear in this particular stage. Then moving on over time, the SME will go into this stage called the growth, where revenues start to increase more steadily than before, and profit as well will catch up and will increase and exceed, will be plus, not minus, and so on for the cash flows. But the cash flows will still, increasing a little behind the revenues and profit. Then we have the shakeout stage, and this shakeout stage, the growth rate of revenues will slow down a bit. Profit will slow down a bit due to the fact that there will be kind of fierce competition in the market, and competitors start to react to the existence of this new comer to the sector or to the market. But cash flows will be improving because the capital expenditures are left behind through the launch and growth stages. Then the SME, after a few years, will reach maturity. In maturity, revenues start to reduce or decline slowly. The profit will still positive, but also the growth in profit is pretty much not noticeable. And the same goes for the cash flows. And finally, if the SME was unable to reinvent itself against competition and against the environmental and the market environment, the SME will face decline. And declining the SMEs will go for revenues and profit and cash flows, and eventually the SME will go into liquidation. Now, for this particular, diagram of the life cycle of an SME, I would like anybody from the participants to make any type of inquiry or question or comment. Please, proceed, anybody. Okay, maybe the second slide will have a more, answer to your inquiries. Here we can see that those phases, how they are interacting with each other, especially when it comes to sales or revenues, profit, and cash. So through the launch, we'll see that the cash flows are minus, far behind the profit, and of course, far behind the sales. Sales will start to become more positive, then going to the growth stage where sales will start to boom, until reaching out the shakeout where the sales start to slow down and they start to decline in the maturity. And finally, in the decline stage, sales will be, reduced considerably. By the monitoring of the profit graph, we see that the profit graph will start with the growth until it reached its peak with the shakeout, and then start to the declining phase faster from the sales. While the cash flows, as we explained that the cash flows will continue to be positive and even slightly increasing in maturity, because cash flows here, are more abundant than before. As we know that in the P&L accounts, there's, depreciation in the overhead costs, and in the cash flows, that depreciation will not appear. This is one thing. The other things is about capital investment. Usually the business, when it reached the shakeout and the maturity, capital investments will be, reduced a lot. That's why the cash flows will be obviously, above the profit. Yes, Ms. Ozge, please, go ahead. You have a question?
Yes, I have a question. When in this chart, the maturity time comes, do we understand that the company would still be less than 10 members of staff? Or are we looking at a bigger grown company?
It could be larger. It could be larger. The number of staff could vary over time. It could be, upsizing, it could be downsizing according to the environmental factors. Because the SME is not static, it's dynamic. Usually the business environment influence SME positively and negatively. For example, we witnessed all, during the pandemic year, that many SMEs either they just put their operations on hold, or even they just were unable to compete anymore, and they just bankrupt and went out of the market. But the core issue here is about the entrepreneur himself. Most entrepreneurs, with their drive, they can reinvent themselves and their businesses and recapture any business opportunity. On the other hand, during the pandemic, some SMEs, they kept a low profile, so they have not invested in growth. They were a bit prudent in their strategy and their expenditures, just to keep the business running and keep the business open. So it's really pretty much, vary from company to company, from sector to sector. But SME is a really dynamic subject, dynamic object that could adapt to changes in the business environment.
Thank you.
I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, exactly, because I was wondering if this is a more generic timeline of overall SME, or maybe like on the larger side, but now I understand it's regardless of the size, I suppose.
Yeah. Usually when maturity happens and the sales start to slow down a bit and decline, most businesses will start to improve their product portfolio by introducing a new products and services that could capture a wider client base, and gain a kind of larger clientele. Usually they do it by reinvesting here.
Mm-hmm.
So they can just extend the maturity as much as possible. So, I mean, here, for example, this is a new product portfolio. Again, after a few years, if the market environment, the consumer behavior and preferences has changed, they could also introduce another product portfolio.
Mm-hmm.
And that would go for most of the businesses apart from their size, because also this the improvement in technology will provide a lot of pressures, I mean, on businesses to improve their services and even to change their business model as well. I mean, we all know that Netflix in the past, they used to be, I mean, videotapes rental. Now they have this huge platform, and still, I mean, you see, I mean, when they reach their growth, other competitors, I mean, followed them. I mean, like Apple platforms and Amazon platform and so on. So it's happened on any, size of a company, whether it's micro, small, medium, and large enterprises. Usually, I mean, this particular strategic point of view to the business is pretty much important. And actually, we in building markets, we put a lot of emphasis on it. So when we handle and provide a service to any business, we start, I mean, to look to this big picture, where the business is heading, how much the entrepreneurs or the owners are willing, I mean, to invest, and what is their vision for the future. All these things need to be taken into consideration. All right, so maybe this is about the general life cycle of SME. Let's have a look on the funding life cycle of an SME, how it will look. We see here the funding life cycle of SME has a kind of a different shape. Here we have the vertical axis is about the level of risk, which means environmental risks, competition, regulations, customer preferences, and so on. All these environmental risks that could affect the business. At the beginning, at the launch, the business risk will be very high because the business will be a kind of question mark. Nobody knows the fate of this business until it's put a kind of a footstep in the market, and the customers start to make it a kind of trial of its products and services. So in this particular, stage, the ability for funding, as we see in this graph in green, we see that their ability will be minimal. And over time, when moving from launch to growth, their ability for access to finance will increase, but not largely, a bit. We see that their ability for, debt funding will be maximized during maturity. In maturity, this will be maximized. And of course, in decline, it will be not existing at all, because most businesses, they need to provide previous year's statements, at least 2 years, 3 years statements, especially for capital investment. So when a business sales are declining, the bank will refrain from financing such a business unless there's opportunity or there's a new products and services are in the pipeline to push the business ahead. So basically, for the SME funding life cycle, we see that newly established businesses have less luck, to obtain funding. That's why in business in building markets, usually we direct these type of businesses towards different and alternative funding sources, not necessarily from institutional funders like banks. We might go for other type of funding that we're going to explain during the course. Now, for the SME financial life cycle, again, having a look at it and make a kind of comparison with what we have, in our beneficiary clientele at building markets, and the exception and the launch, usually, the sources of finance will be owners' resources, their own resources. They will invest in their business. Now, the potential problems here is lack of planning. Lack of planning might lead to undercapitalization, which means the enterprise won't be able to cope with its operating costs, and even for needed fixed assets. And this is really common. From the our interaction with our 2,700 SMEs at building markets, we see this, repeated again and again. This is an important issue for business owners to make as much prudent planning as possible by imagining and materializing scenarios that are not optimistic. They need to be at least, just in the middle or tending to be more pessimistic. Then we have the first growth. The first growth, usually here the business is settled. It has its own network. Its digital footprint now is available through the banking system and other, credit rating tools, like in Turkey, for example, Findex system. We see that in the first, growth, that the sources of finance we continue to be retained profits, which means that the business will start financing itself, plus trade credit, which means suppliers will finance the business. They will provide the business with its needed resources on credit, for example, 30 days, 90 days, and so on. Plus, the business will have more accessibility to banking loans, especially short-term loans, and overdraft facilities, which means that it's a kind of short-term facilities to finance, in most cases, working capital. Now, these type also of businesses, the SMEs, also might find leasing products at banks as such important for them and easier to get to finance whether working capital or fixed assets. Now, this particular, the growth, we might have potential problems like rapidly expanding SMEs may face over trading. So there will be a kind of liquidity crisis, which means, in the growth stage, the business will push to sell more and more to the extent there will be a kind of turbulence in their balance of the cash flows, incoming cash flows. So they are unable to finance their purchases and procurement. This is also very common, especially, with building markets beneficiary SMEs. Now, the second growth stage here, the company will start to reach maturity. There is a lot of growth and sales. Now, longer-term finance could be sought, especially from financial institutions. And here, it could be the main problems here is the finance gap, which means that the enterprise has high level of short-term debt to the extent that she might not be able to, justify asking for longer-term financial, credit line or debt. But in any case, in our SMEs with building markets, it's less common because in most cases they are prudent, in their financing. Usually they would like, to get finance, but to a certain level. Now, for the third growth, as above, plus external equity. Now the company reaching maturity, there are a lot of formalization happened in the company which means the company has more compliance with the regulations and financial institutions requirements. Many SMEs could seek external equity financing in the format of venture capital, for example. And but here, I mean, some owners might see it as a loss of control because, I mean, the venture capital firm will loosen the independence of the owner, which means that now they are equity shareholders and they have a decision in the board of the company. And in our beneficiary base is also a bit less common. While for maturity, all the resources above will be available. And in maturity, the most important indicator would be the ROI, which is the return on investment. And also, it's a bit less common with our SMEs, since most of them are young SMEs. So they are still young and they are still growing. For the decline stage, I mean, withdrawal of finance, which means the incapacity of the company to seek, I mean, external finance. And here, ROI, of course, will be deteriorated. And again, I mean, it's less with our beneficiary of SMEs, as I said, because it's most of them are young. All right, we see also the life cycle again from a different perspective. Here we are talking about the firm size, the firm age, and the firm information availability. And here I would put some stress on it, firm's information availability, which means that the firm ability to provide evidence of its operation and its eligibility for loans. We see here that we have the micro businesses. They are less than 10 employees. We got, I mean, the number of employees as the criteria for this type of classification. And also it goes with the, Turkish identification of SME. Then we have the small size, which is between 10 to 50, the medium size between 50 to 250, and the large enterprises will go beyond 250. Now, for very small firms, usually they are possibly with no collateral and no track record, which is pretty much obvious. Most of those small enterprises, they don't have proper collateral that could they provide to finance themselves externally, especially from financial institutions. And due to the low level of fixed assets that they have. Of course, I mean, in some cases, the business owner might have a car, for example, which is a movable asset. I mean, in return, who could have access to a loan by putting the car as collateral. And for small firms, possibly with high growth potential, but often with limited track record. Now here, the track record, it's in Turkey, for example, in Turkey, it's, particularly the digital footprint at the banking system and the Fendik system, which is the creditworthiness rating system. So this is what is meant with the track record. Now, looking to the available credit lines or instruments, the credit instruments for such enterprises, we see that the initial insider finance, which is the self-financing capacity, then we have the angel financiers. Those angel financiers, usually they finance the startup, and usually they ask for high return because of all the risks incurred during the process. And also they have access to trade credit, especially supplier credit, which means that they can buy on credit term for 30 days or 90 days. Now moving the size scale, reaching the medium-sized firms, some track record is available, collateral is available when necessary. So here, I mean, most of the medium-sized enterprises, they will have more chance to get engaged with the venture capital firm, so they can, increase their assets and finance their second, growth stage. Usually, the medium-sized firms, they all look to move to be a corporation, a large firm. And the venture capital will be very attractive, despite the fact that venture capital firms, they are usually looking for high potential return, high potential and high growth SMEs, medium-sized enterprises. And of course, when the enterprise reach a size like a large firm, now here the risk will be known, and in most cases, the regulatory environment will enforce them to provide more transparent information and to keep a proper recording. It's according to the regulatory environment, especially when it comes to closed stock companies and so on. And here, I mean, the company could have access to public equity, which means the company could have access to the capital market by having a kind of initial public offering, and the company could issue, shares and sell it at the stock exchanges. Now, for short-term financial institution loans, from micro businesses to small and medium-sized, all will be benefiting of it. Of course, under one condition, that they are in compliance with the banking requirement. For medium to long-term financial institution loans, most probably from small to large enterprises, they will have easier access from the micro businesses. But it's still there's a window for micro businesses, as previously I mentioned, through some banking products like leasing, for example, for equipment, for fixed assets needs, and so on. All right. So before going to have a kind of 10 minutes break, let's see what SMEs do we have at Building Markets Network. In Building Markets Network, we have 2,776 SMEs. Of course, they are distributed over the geography of Turkey. We have in Istanbul, Ankara, Izmir, Mersin, Adana, Hatay, Gaziantep, and Şanlıurfa. Now, regarding the classification of those 2,700 SMEs, they are as follows. Around 77% of them are micro businesses, which means that they have less than 10 employees, while around 21% of them are small enterprises having less than 50 employees. And we have around 2%, which is a medium-sized enterprises that are above 50 employees. Those beneficiaries, usually we tackle them according to their individual needs. Now, most of those companies, they have a kind of top challenges, and on the number one is accessing finance. Of course, we have environmental, risks and challenges like the exchange rate, competition. We have high operating expenses, regulation, bureaucracy, taxation, lack of demand, lack of skilled labor, for example, and of course, the language barriers as well. But here, noticeably, we see that language barriers are not that high. It's only 10%. On the other hand, we see that around 7%, they mentioned that there is no challenges at all, which is very cool. They are pretty much optimistic, but still, number one would be the access to finance. Now, regarding the financing gap in our network, around 54.7% of those SMEs, they are interested to take out a loan for working capital or capital investment. So they constitute around 1,518 SMEs. Now, the average loan amount desired by these enterprises is around 140,000 USD. That will lead us that the overall demand in our network for financing is a huge number. It's around 212 million USD. Of course, this particular number is not the gap; it's the demand. Value. Now, the gap itself could be calculated through this equation, which is the finance gap equal potential demand minus existing supply. Now, for the existing supply, it's a bit, difficult to be calculated, despite the fact that currently, there's a kind of a certain behavior for funders. There's a kind of tendency to go for more short-term financial services rather than for long-term financial service. Please, if anybody has any inquiry, make an intervention and don't leave it to the end. You might forget it. We can discuss it right away. Now, looking for the business environment and its effect on the access to finance for SMEs, we see, this particular, items like legal and regulatory framework, bank financing, non-bank financing, venture capital ecosystem, and financial literacy. And all of them, they are really interacting with each other. For the legal and regulatory framework, usually it focuses on the legislation that will facilitate access to finance, including protection of creditor rights, facilitating the use of collateral and credit information, and banking and stock market regulations. This one is pretty much important. For example, I'll bring one example that microfinance in Turkey is not an industry because there is no regulatory framework for it. So that's why main providers are of microfinance. They don't have microfinance banks that disperse loans to beneficiaries in the country due to this particular, constraint. And of course, countries differ from each other when it comes to how they structure and how they deploy their financial services entities. And that's in particular, one of the noticeable things in Turkey that the microfinance industry is not existing. There are some programs financed by financial institutions that provide microfinance, but it's short-term programs that need to be, financed on annual basis and to have extension and licensing for their operation in the country on periodical basis. Now, the banking financing is considered in Turkey a leading service provider. Here, we are looking to the lending practices of local banks, markets, and the availability of credit guarantees. Now, it's the two things. So availability of credit guarantees versus the lending practices. Now, of course, the banking sector in Turkey is strong and heavily regulated and in compliance with the international standard. Now, the non-bank financing, again, in Turkey, we have diversified non-banking financing like leasing and factoring. As I said, the microfinance banks, they are not available, or the institution, they are not available, but there are a few, programs running in the country for non-registered businesses in particular. Now, the venture capital ecosystem, again, in Turkey, it's very strong, the venture capital ecosystem, much better from the neighboring countries, and it's very effective. And there are international players in them and also local players. Lastly, the financial literacy. Financial literacy is how much efforts are doing, to promote financial know-how among the business community and wider population. All in all, in building markets, we look to the financial literacy seriously, and we are providing a lot of capacity building for this particular issue on our electronic platform, plus in-person training and mentoring. All in all, we can say that the business environment could be supportive to SMEs, or only for SMEs, or maybe for large enterprises. It's pretty much difficult to define it. But the beneficiaries of the financial services, is pretty much important to define them, to define their preferences, and especially their status quo and their investment readiness and so on. So before I continue with the second subject, let's have a break of 10 minutes. And we'll get back to you, in 10 minutes at 3:50. We'll continue. Thank you very much. Thank you for joining me. Welcome back, everybody. And thank you very much for your listening. And please, if you have any question, please, let's start. I think Ms. Ozge has a question.
Yes, hi. I was really enjoying hearing about the alternative ways of financing. And you talked about microfinance, that it's not a real industry in Turkey. I never saw a Syrian SME who benefited from factoring or other alternative financing mechanisms. I was wondering if you know of any examples, or I don't know, maybe you'll get to this later. I'm sorry, I'm very curious. But when you mentioned those, in my mind, these alternative financing ways are very limited for especially Syrian SMEs in Turkey, and even for Turkish, I think. So I was wondering your comment.
Yeah, thank you very much for highlighting this particular important issue. Now here we have two things. We have factoring, which is the liquidation of
KOBİ'lerin finansman erişiminin değerlendirilmesi.
Okay, no problem. Yes, and the second issue would be leasing. Now, leasing is to procure assets. Usually, they do it to procure assets. Now, few Syrian companies in Turkey were able to utilize the leasing products, while factoring is not desirable due to its high cost. So it will be replaced by the trade credit, which means that the supplier credit, which is based on networking, on relationship, and it's not institutional. But for companies that are considered large or medium and above, actually they use all those type of alternative financing, including the factoring and leasing. Okay, so we'll move on with this particular title: Why SME finance remains a challenge. As we see in the diagram, we have micro enterprises, we have SMEs, and we have corporate, which means that we have micro businesses, small and medium-sized businesses, and large businesses. If we see for those indicators, we start with separation between the private and company assets. This one is pretty much important. Segregation of duties and all those governance issues are important. As a best practices, the enterprise will provide a kind of evidence of its good governance. And this type of separation will find that a standard practice with a large corporation, while in SMEs, it will be varied between an SME and another. So it's not the standard. And we'll see it very low with micro enterprises. And of course, micro enterprises, in most cases, they will have a kind of type of ownership that will be hard for them to separate between the company assets and their private assets, like the proprietorship ownership. And while the LTDs, the limited liability companies, will have a better separation because it's enforced by the regulation. For example, an LTD, the owner need to maintain certain regulations in managing his accounts and his cash flows, and he cannot, do a lot with them. But still, even in large corporations, we see a lot of misconduct. For example, a month ago, I think everybody heard about the FTX, scandal. It's a large enterprise. It's a cryptocurrency exchange platform that was misusing the user deposits, which means that the founders were misusing the users of the platform deposit, and it made a lot of it went viral, and now the founders are facing justice and criminal indictment as well. The second variable would be, or indicator would be, formal accounting. Again, corporations, by law, they are, obliged to, have a kind of standard accounting systems, while micro businesses, they lack in this particular issue. And the same for the availability of collateral, demand for flexible and tailor-made loans, usage of bank services rather than loans. Here, for example, even micro enterprises might not have a sufficient digital footprint in the banking system due to the lack of using of the banking services in general terms. But this will be improved with the SMEs, and of course, it will be a standard with the corporation. Then we have the number of external registered employees, and we have then the decision making based on long-term business planning. Also, this is very important. Usually, micro businesses, they don't have long-term plans, even in the inception phase. And this thing will be improved when go the upscale to the SMEs and the corporate context. So basically, the micro businesses will be the hardest to have access to finance, while SMEs, it will be according to case by case, while corporations, they will have easier access due to compliance issues with the regulatory framework and banking requirements. Now we move to the financial services to SMEs in Turkey, and we will see with each other the landscape in Turkey about the access to finance. I put mainly the 9 important players, and I will add one, in a minute. At the beginning, we have the development banks. They've been working in the country for many years successfully, like the EBRD, the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, EIB, which is the European Investment Bank, and KfW, which is the German Development Bank. But those development banks, they have a limitation because they are targeting high potential SMEs or startups. And usually their key requirements to extend their services directly is to have a kind of capital intensive project with sound financial ratios. And they need a lot of compliance. So, the loan applicant need to have, a lot of requirements to achieve or to get such services from development banks. Usually, they're medium-sized financial loans or credit might start with 5 million USD. And of course, this is, very low, when it comes to building markets beneficiary. The second one will be the grants from international funded programs like ICMPD, Spark, JSUR, and INGIV. Usually those, programs, they are targeting the refugee-owned businesses and the businesses of the host community. And here, in terms of suitability, they are pretty much suitable for a building market beneficiary base. And in most cases, one of their key requirements is the job creation. And regarding fitness, they will fit all sizes. For example, the ICMPD in their last grant, they targeted all company sizes. The small size enterprises has a certain ceiling for the grant, and the same goes for the medium and for the large. It was these three thresholds ranges from 45,000 euros up to 300,000 euros, according to the company size. But still, they need a lot of compliance with their requirements and evidence of the job creation. For commercial banks, we have it whether they are participatory, between brackets, Islamic, or the normal or traditional commercial banks like Guarantee, Afikrede, and we have also Al Baraka as participatory bank. Usually, SMEs could approach them if they have a certain level of compliance with their requirement. Sometimes they, for long-term, investment and financing, they might ask for audited Turkish SME, which means that the SME needs to be audited from external auditor, and that external auditor needs to be, of course, licensed. So the key requirements will be audited financial statements. So history here is pretty much important, and they mostly fit for small size, and I would say also for other sizes as well. But for building market beneficiary, it will be a bit low for the reasons that we were discussing it with Ms. Özge, because usually those SMEs in many cases might not be able to provide the proper collateral. Then we have the local crowdfunders. We have many platforms. Maybe the most famous one is Bongogo. Usually the focus is about creative startups. And of course, their mechanism is that the presentation here plays a vital role, which means that the business founder needs to develop a kind of a video explaining his business idea and how he's going to materialize this particular idea into a business, profitable business. Of course, most of the focus will go for creative startups. Now, regarding the key requirements, they could provide donation or reward-based of public interest projects, or equity-based, as recently they are allowed by the regulator in Turkey, to proceed with providing equity-based services. Of course, equity-based services, what does it mean? That the funder or the funders will hold a stake in the company. And of course, for their fitness, they go to micro businesses and for creative and social purposes. For international crowdfunders, like Keva, GoFundMe, and Kickstarter, they focus on micro, small, medium-sized enterprises. Their suitability for a BM beneficiary is high, despite the fact that they need a lot of preparation, and their portfolio of services expand from reward, equity, lending, and donation. And in most cases, small businesses will get benefit out of it. Now, regarding the meaning of reward, here is that I will promise my funder to provide them something in return. While equity, I will officially, allocate part of my shares to the ownership of the funders for lending. I'm getting a loan from them. For donation, I'm accepting a donation from them. Now, for microfinance institutions, as we said that this industry is not existing in Turkey, but we have this two famous programs that they have been running for many years, the PGPM and Maya. Usually they targeting micro businesses, especially in the gray economy, which means not non-registered businesses. And for building market beneficiary based, they have a very low, level of fitness for them because most of or all of our beneficiary based actually they are registered enterprises, and in most cases their needs might exceed what those institutions offering. Here, the key requirement would be just the sound cash flow, maybe some social collateral, not material collateral or monetary collateral, and fitness mostly for micro businesses, especially not registered micro businesses. Then we have the venture capital firms like Arya and Galata. Usually the focus here about high return businesses and startups, especially in ICT. And that goes again as a fitness for BM beneficiary base as also very low because the number of the businesses working in the ICT sector is not that high. And they might ask also for a lot of requirements, including external audit of the company, enterprise valuation as well. All these, processes need to be, existing at the beneficiary company. And it could fit for most of the sizes, but small size enterprises might find it very attractive, so they can have a kind of boost to boost and accelerate their growth. For impact investment, we have maybe the key player will be Kizley. Here, the focus will be on social and environmental and startups. Also for BM beneficiary, they are not that attractive. Again, they need a certain level of compliance when it comes to audit and valuation of the businesses. And most cases, it's all about creative businesses and social businesses. Number 9 would be the capital market. Now, the key players will be, Istanbul Stock Exchange, and the focus will be about audited Turkish SMEs who could issue shares or bonds. And again, for the BM beneficiary base, they might not be attractive because most of those beneficiaries who are interested with capital market need to have a higher level of compliance, and their sizes and maturity need to be, in reasonable, level. In terms of number of years operating in the business, product and services portfolio, sales growth rate, reputation and company image, and so on. So basically, this is the most important access to finance landscape in Turkey. But here, I would like to put number 10, which is private investors. Private investors played a good role, with building market beneficiary base. Most of the successful access to finance interventions has happened through private investors, where we play the role of facilitator and mediator between the two parties by providing our technical expertise in to make the two parties in harmony with each other about the business objectives and vision and so on. Please, any question, any inquiry about the landscape in Turkey? Any addition? Anybody who would like to make any addition? Okay, now looking to the landscape itself, we see that we are having on the left side of the screen the requirement for each particular source of finance. So for the development banks, since it's pretty much demanding for compliance, we see the list is really long. But again, for some grants is the same, like the ICMPD. Now the commercial banks also, they will have such level of compliance. Local crowdfunding might be easier a bit, especially when it comes to reward. But when it comes to equity and lending, they will ask for more, compliance, and they will ask for more formalization. International crowdfunders will ask for more formalization. Micro institutions or programs, in the case of Turkey, they will have the least. It's all about having a kind of cash flow. The project cash flow is positive. And in many cases, the loan officer at the program or the institution, he will prepare the cash flow for the beneficiary. Because in many cases, the beneficiary is unable or is not financially literate enough, to produce such cash flows. Venture capital firms, also the requirement is high and long. And lastly, the most regulated source of funding would be the capital market, which is pretty much, regulated and controlled, by many, official financial institutions. Here's something in common, that the banking business plan is important for all. And here I will make a highlight. For example, if I'm a micro business and I'm looking for external source of funding, I might not find sources of funding, but grants. And even for grants, I need to develop a kind of proper business plan. So when the grant is announced, I can immediately start formulating the project plan according to the business plan that I already have. So it's pretty much important that most of the businesses of all sizes to prepare their own business plan for any future intervention, access to finance intervention. Now let's talk a bit about access to finance strategy of building markets. Here the process in building markets will go for find, build, and connect. And I intentionally put this particular photo, which shows me in the middle between two parties. And at that particular session, I was making matchmaking and connection between the two parties for a new investment. And I see that this photo will sum up the whole thing. It needs a lot of interaction between parties. It needs a lot of field work between them. Usually access to finance at building markets is pretty much dynamic. And we are pretty much close to the beneficiaries. And we provide not only the capacity building, but also we provide the representation. And we are advocating them, for any type of investment intervention, whether with a financial institution or with, private investors, like the one here appear in the photo. To bring a kind of summary of the access to finance strategy for building market, maybe this slide will explain it all. When we talk about find, we analyze the investment readiness of the enterprise, we identify gaps, then we try to make an action plan for the enterprise to overcome all these gaps. and moving the enterprise towards the capacity building, where we build the capacity of the enterprise through provision of advisory services to enhance investment readiness, through mentorship, training, and so on. And lastly, we have the connection, which is the finance facilitation, which means that we provide technical assistance and the preparation of the grants schemes, loan applications, or investment applications, MOU, Memorandum of Understanding between parties, and so on. So basically, this is the big picture of how we provide this particular service. Now, regarding the programming of it, usually we tackle each, pillar in our strategy alone and provide a kind of program for it. We allocate resources for it and so on. For example, here, investment readiness analysis, we have for this year estimation of the estimated number of SME beneficiaries will be 200. And those 200 SMEs will be analyzed against their investment readiness, and they will be provided advice on matching the proper financing options for them. Now, this will give us an indicator of how long that particular SME it will take them to until they are in a good level of investment readiness. So we could also accompany them and represent them when we are connecting them with the potential or the sought funding source. Here, let's see together that in one of those grant schemes of the ICMPD, we see on the left field, on the left column, that the eligibility criteria was about geography, regulation, financial, and management. For example, in the regulatory, there was a kind of criteria that the SME need to have more than 10 employees registered. Now here, those SMEs from SME 1 to SME 6, they are, real SMEs that has been engaged in this particular and applied for that particular grant. And we see that half of them were unable to provide evidence that they have more than 10 employees. And of course, they do have. And the same goes for their, for example, balance sheet, total assets, which need to be more than 3 million TL. Also, half of them were unable to provide evidence, and the same for the total turnover and so on. So, here compliance play an important role. And let's, think about what can CSOs do to increase SMEs' access to finance. I brought here an example between Spark International and ENGIF. We all know, those two CSOs. If we benchmark them against these criteria, providing information and advice, facilitating access to finance, providing financing directly, and building capacity and advocacy, we see that, for example, Spark, they are providing, advice on financing options, while ENGIF providing advice on business setup for entrepreneurs. In the facilitation of access to finance, Spark is in. Providing financing directly. Spark, usually they provide grants for micro businesses and in-kind assistance, and the same for ENGIF, and the same goes for both. Now, the business model of the CSO need to find gap in the market with the current providers and to try to fill it. For example, in building markets, we invest a lot in our training platform. So our beneficiary will have easy access to information, know-how. Plus, we have a kind of, large mentorship program. Now, the number of mentors at building markets is increasing constantly. So we can be able to provide the mentorship and advice, whether in person or over Zoom, to the maximum number of beneficiaries. So I think the key here, for any CSO is to define and know your beneficiary. It's very important. What's missing? what we can offer for them. And for this, I put a few notes as potential actions from CSOs, how to provide and facilitate access to finance. It could be through the representation and advocating on behalf of our beneficiaries, so we can, help them out in this. We could also provide technical assistance by assisting them preparing their business plans, financial projections, governance and compliance, preparing investment applications, and so on. And for capacity building, we could develop a certain type of skills and knowledge that they might miss, so we can make sure that their package is ready for investment in the future. And finally, advocacy. Advocacy is very important to work closely with governmental agencies and to provide a kind of promotion and to promote policies that support the development of access to finance to SMEs. I think my presentation has come to an end. Thank you very much for your nice listening and interaction. And please, just a kind of kind reminder, there's a evaluation form for the training that need to be filled. And please, before filling it, if anybody has any type of inquiry, question, please, hit me directly. Okay, please, Mr. Oskar, proceed.
I'm sorry, I couldn't resist asking one more question.
Yeah, please, my pleasure.
This was really a very amazing amount of information from my point of view. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's like a lot of the knowledge gap that we have. I can see that it was almost in one page, especially where you filed the requirements from different financial instruments. I was then thinking for a CSO in our situation, where we have more SMEs asking us for assistance than our capacity to answer. Maybe, I cannot imagine anyone in our team having all this information, but would you recommend some kind of training or a way for us to direct them correctly, at least at an initial stage? Knowing that we are not Inge, we are not Spark, we don't have mentors, should we direct them to a mentor, or is there a way for us to increase our capacity to maybe diagnose their situation and give them a specific advice?
I think a collaborative approach among CSOs is really important. So they could complete each other's. For example, COPRU could have a good, history and experience and research that could feed other CSOs and the design phase of their services. So I think collaboration and collaborative approach is very important, and that particular engagement and interaction will evolve to grow the skills of all CSOs together and the experiences of them. I think this is only in my mind, collaborative approach to tackle the issue by working closely with other CSOs.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, we've been doing that too, of course. But for example, today I realized that I can give a direct advice to an SME, even if it's like a informal conversation, to increase their credit note or to direct them to this institution or that institution. So that was great. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, really. Thank you for this interaction, and thank you for joining us. Thank you. Okay, please, a kind reminder to fill out the evaluation form. It was really my pleasure, to conduct this workshop, and looking forward, for any type of inquiries, you can, contact me over the phone, over the email, and over the phone. And thank you very much. And see you soon, hopefully.